What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we'll be talking about the Bitcoin price chart, along with the XRP price chart, as we kick off a new week after an extended holiday break. For us, we celebrated Easter. It was nice to have a couple of days off away from the charts and away from the cluster of noise that is over there on Twitter or X. It's nice to be back with a fresh set of eyes and a rested mind to look at these charts with a better perspective. But the also nice thing about the holiday break is that we ended up having relatively tame price action, and now we're kicking off a new week. And over here in crypto, we do see some green before the stock market does open. Fortunately, price behavior for like Bitcoin is still humming right on along as we would expect in a recovery. We are starting to reach areas of resistance in here, where typically you do pull off an ABC correction from these levels before prices shift their way back up. We do know that when Bitcoin went into recovery back in 2023 after the FTX collapse and didn't necessarily behave precisely like that, it was more so of a running flat or an extended flat, in which prices really kind of fired to the upside and then pulled back down, where our ABC was more so like that rather than your standard ABC. However, as we get back to these levels, that's typically what does happen. So I don't come here to be like, hey, watch out, it's going to correct. I come back here to say, look, this is exactly how recoveries do look like. There's a potential that an ABC correction comes from here, but it would actually be really normal for that to occur. And of course, people see these things and they say, oh my gosh, you think we're going to go all the way to June on that? Well, you could see how long this one lasted over here. No, these are not based on time. It's just structure. But for those who are like familiar with like what crashing structures look like, right? When we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rolls back up to wave 4 within wave 5. And then you hit 7 down in here, right? What typically happens is you roll right back up to these levels and then ABC from here. And then you go for the breakout. So it's kind of like being in that moment right in there. Whether this thing just peters like this and then breaks, or goes like this and then breaks. It could do various things. Just the most common is the ABC. But so far, going through the weekend, prices certainly have behaved the way we would want them to behave in the event of a recovery. The things that we were talking about last week, as well as things of like bullish divergences emerging over here on the daily time frame. And you can see here in this move that we do have here this morning, the RSI, or Relative Strength Index, has broken out to the highest strength that we've seen dating back to January. So we are seeing the strength start to emerge back in here. Other things we can look at, like shifting out a couple of time frames here, go to the 2-day time frame. You can really see that showing up down here on the MACD, how much it has started to curl over in here, and finally starting to see the green bars appear in here after really shifting down there in December. And then just humming along through here, we're really starting to see some momentum change happening in here on the MACD on the 2-day time frame. And then if you shift out even one more time frame, there you have it on the 3 days. This has been where we've been at since late December. And then finally, here we are in April. We're starting to shift our way out of here. We've got a full-blown cross happening here on the 3-day time frame. So the momentum has certainly started to change. And I pointed to this last week as well with our stochastic RSI breaking upwards as well after being stuck down in here for the same late December, January, February, March, April. Here we are. So we definitely have momentum going more in our favor for a recovery happening here for Bitcoin, and price structures acting like what a recovery looks like for Bitcoin. So whether you love Bitcoin, hate Bitcoin, you definitely want to see that. Other things that had really kind of a tame weekend, but off to a decent start here to kick off the week would be XRP. This is going to be the big thing to watch for this week, I think. We do look fully developed in here, as if it would be time for us to make a decision and prove if we're going to get our push out of here to confirm this as being an ABC correction in here. The most challenging thing about the XRP price chart over the last couple of months has really been that thing right there. And that's, of course, when Trump came out and made his Truth Social posts saying about a crypto strategic reserve, including XRP, Solana, and Cardano. That had created a nightmare on the chart for me for the last couple of months. And really, I just don't think we would have gotten that had it not been for that moment. And that's also why it took it back so fast, is that the market just wasn't prepared for something like that. And what it really appears more so is that this has been a bigger ABC correction in here, and that all these phases have taken place and that we would not have gotten that. And this really just would have hummed along and then finally gotten our break in here. And then that would have been capitulation. So to confirm that, the next thing we're just looking for is to see evidence that price can actually push through here and get itself back into the retracement levels. And again, my thoughts are we go into those retracement levels. I don't think we're going to have the strength to be able to push our way out of there yet, because I don't think Bitcoin in the broader market is ready to go for that type of move. And I still think we would ABC correct in here after that. However, it would just give more confirmation for me that that was our low, that was capitulation, timed with narratives, right? But looking at the chart and how developed we are at this point, you would think if it's going to happen, well, we would be ready to go for it at some point this week. It would also make sense to me if we do that. And if it happens relatively fast, maybe there's a news narrative, maybe the SEC comes out and announces that they've created the settlement, right? We get the official announcement from the SEC, and then we're talking about an ABC correction. Well, that's what we're talking about over here on Bitcoin, and whether, it's just a quick one or it's more of a prolonged one. That's more of like a running flat correction. That's like an ABC. It seems like we would be kind of aligned for what's going on over here in Bitcoin of what typically happens in recoveries. And ABC seems like it's coming out of here pretty soon. And well, it would make sense for us to get one out of here too, if we can kind of get that quick move to happen in there. So it's kind of the order of operations I'm hoping for and watching for this week, is that we do actually get a break coming here for XRP up into the retracement levels. I do think it'll stall out in the retracement levels, but confirming that the bottom of that correction is done. Shifting over to things like the dominance, right? This still hasn't changed. It's still just been humming along. I'm not going to go too deep into the dominance on XRP because I've done that in a couple of videos over the last 2 weeks. I still think this thing's targeting like 10, 11, 12% for the dominance, so long as our structures remain. If our structures start changing, if the dominance starts going from 4.5%, and we get all the way down here to 3.5% or something, that will not be something I would have expected. But what I would expect is probably just humming along in here until finally things can get shifting. So far, so good. It's really just humming along as it's probably going to do until Bitcoin starts giving a lot more excitement to the market. And when that excitement comes, that's when these things tend to go at the same time too. But it's why we're also looking at things from the bigger perspective in here and saying, are we starting to see things change in here, right? We can look at our structures and all that good stuff, and that is great. But do we see the dynamics happening underneath the hood at the same time? And we do. And that favors these types of things for XRP dominance or the XRP price chart. And why would we end up seeing an ABC correction show up in here if we're able to get some type of quick pop back up into the retracement levels? And it's because we're probably going to get one over here on Bitcoin too. Again, just to reiterate the bigger picture perspective of the way that I'm looking at Bitcoin, it's as if we are in kind of one of the last corrections before the last little parabola gets put in here. Now, I'm not in the camp of like $180,000, $200,000, $250,000 price for Bitcoin. I'm more of in the camp of like, if we can actually get this thing, of it being more like 125, 130, 135, and then that's kind of the wrap up of everything. We kind of see the crypto market kind of broaden out. Bitcoin dominance falls, all the excitement happens, and it's in a relatively short amount of time happening throughout here. And that's just what we're doing right now. So long as Bitcoin just continues to hold on top of that 50-week moving average, still just remains the idea, and just kind of patiently waiting for things to turn their way back up and do so. Things, of course, that are just going to make things challenging that we've just talked about over and over again is how this market is so different from past markets. We've kind of seen those things, that things were different leading up to this without the expansion of the Russell 2000, as we had things like the Dow Jones Industrial Average able to exceed their 2022 highs, along with the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. The Russell 2000 was not capable of doing so, making this market a different market dynamic in regards to breadth that we've ever seen. We've even seen that breadth dynamic translate over there into crypto as well, where Bitcoin dominance is still high. Here we are 4 years past the previous peak. We've never seen the Bitcoin dominance unwind. We've never seen the breadth really open up throughout the market. And so we're dealing with all those challenges of navigating waters that we've never been through. And so still, we're going to be monitoring the stock market in here. Things that were interesting last week is that, we had, of course, 2 weeks ago, you had a nice big fat green bar over here for things like the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the NASDAQ, and the S&P 500. Whereas last week, they all pulled back. A little bit of red over here in the S&P, red over here in the NASDAQ, red over here in the Dow. But one thing that was kind of interesting was that the Russell 2000 was actually green last week. All the major indexes were red, but we actually had green in the Russell. So, right, that's the big hot debate right now on how this is going to recover in here. Does this have to revisit the lows? I've given examples of that. Typically, you are going to see a revisit of these lows. The reason why it is so difficult for me to say that we have to literally set a new low at this point is because usually what happens is we create these parabolas in here, and it has to go down and get that low in order to get the very last ones of the parabola. But as you can see throughout here, we've already done that. We've gotten all of them. And so is it fully necessary that we have to come down and do one more when we've really kind of already gotten it? That's the kind of the head scratcher point right now. But like, even if you didn't go set a new low, or even just barely did, I mean, you could still just bounce around at these lows a little while for in here before eventually, right, that ABC and then that little push, and then that's it, lights out. So we're still stuck in this environment over here on the US stock market. I thought it was interesting to see the Russell had a better week than the major indexes last week, but not so sure that it's like doing a full-blown reversal just yet. So while things have really stabilized, still a bit of uncertainty over there in the US stock market. There are the positive things in here to see structural behavior happening here in the cryptocurrency market, mixed with those divergences of momentum having waned over here, right? I mean, this is the point at which the stock market breaks down. Change that color right in there. And you could see Bitcoin has shown more strength in the stock market to be able to come back from where all this stuff happens from the tariffs, right? It's just definitely a different game we're navigating here this time around compared to all the past ones. And just all that whining and complaining I've done about the Russell 2000 just kind of goes to show it now how different the game is compared to the past ones. Because never at 4 years before have we ever been this far into things and the dominance hasn't broken down, or the breadth hasn't opened in the crypto market and the breadth hasn't opened in the stock market. And we're just navigating it kind of day by day. Fortunately, in crypto, there are some positive things to look at in here. And so long as Bitcoin's on top of that 50-week moving average, mixed with the structure it's got, mixed with the bullish divergences and strength behaviors happening under the hood, we're okay. If things went below the 50-week moving average, which is around $77,000, the story would probably change, but we're not there right now. We're acting much more like what happens in recoveries. And for the record, I don't think it's going to look like this. This is just kind of an example of how they can look. You can ricochet out of here very quickly. There's various shapes you can take in here, but the corrective structures tend to be the same on the way down. The way back up is going to be the challenging part, but we're definitely doing the things we would want to see happen over here in crypto right now. And, you mix in all the crazy stuff happening out there too. And then you look over here at the US dollar currency index. Earlier this morning, it was in the 97s. So, obviously it rejected off of the 702 Fibonacci retracement over in here. It's taken out multi-year lows. This historically is favorable for crypto, but the picture is so wild out there with all the things that are different when it comes to stock market breadth, or it comes to precious metals ripping, or it comes to the DXY falling and crashing. You can make an argument for either side over and over and over again. And it's like we're just playing in this washing machine of insanity. And sometimes there's so much noise and it's so much and it can be so overwhelming. And then you go to Twitter and you got everybody screaming everything. And everybody's a genius on Twitter because they've analyzed everything. That sometimes it's easiest just to cut out all the noise and just look at the charts, look at Bitcoin and say, all right, right now in the current state of where we're at, how are we doing? Well, we have a corrective structure that we've produced and we have bullish divergences emerging on the daily, the 2-day, and over here on the 3-day time frames, right? What the volatility will look like in the meantime, hard to know, hard to pinpoint how each day is going to behave. We know we're getting to a level where things can be a little bit stalled out up in here at the peak of this range. So there could be a little bit of a struggle happening right here, but we're definitely doing the things we want to see happen in here after completing full-blown, get this off of here, structures that we would want to see, right? And I talked about this last week too, just we have every single phase in here of what it looks like for capitulation phase, even down to the little fake rally that happens right before it capitulates, right on what, just like with FTX, we get our tariff news, right? We get our same stuff happening in here and prices are up now. So indicator wise, price structure wise, we actually look okay over here in the cryptocurrency market. It's just a macro picture that's still going to be blurry for a little while. But we have things like the dollar falling really hard to know how long we're going to kind of be stuck here over in broader markets and in stocks, and whether or not there's just going to be some type of tweet that happens or Truth Social post that happens and an announcement from the White House to be like, hey, the narrative has totally changed. And, that's always possible at the same time too. But if we try to ignore that and we try to ignore the noise and not let X or Twitter cloud our brains with the insane amount of noise that happens over there, and we just look at price structure and behavior and technical indicator behavior, we look like we're acting like we should be acting, especially for Bitcoin. And if XRP breaks out of here, the story is exactly the same. It just looks like normal corrective behavior. So that's what we'll be watching for throughout the rest of this week. I'd like to see a move come out of here for XRP to give me the assurance that that was it. We're still waiting on that. But otherwise, other structures we've talked about in the market with things like SWI, they still look good. They still look fine. So on things like Bitcoin, it looks like we've gotten through the worst of it. It looks like we're probably in something like that right now. As you get back to the top of these ranges, we'll see what it ends up looking like from here. And we'll see if we get a little bit of rotation happening throughout the market before that thing kind of pulls back a little bit. Again, I don't think it'll look like that. It's a unique situation. That was the banking scare that happened back in like March or April of 2023. And frankly, we've seen so many just tweets and news narratives and everything like that that shift prices so dramatically that even rather than just having a simple little breakdown below the support with a back test, we get massive volatilities in here with all types of narratives and things that happen in here too. So remaining nimble, full-blown picture in here. Things look okay, but there's usually a process of working your way back up, and I think we're just working on that. And all of our bullish divergences add strength to that argument, and our structure adds strength to that argument at the same time. But as for any type of dramatic price action this week, the thing I'm really kind of paying attention to really closely is to see how prices react here for XRP, and to see if we can get our break back into the retracement levels. Otherwise, it's nice to be back after having a small 3-day vacation for the holiday. As I'd mentioned last week, I was on a 25-day streak of working through what has been a very volatile time in the market, and the news narratives have been all over the place. And some of the rules I kind of set for myself while I was on my vacation was to completely minimize the amount of time I spent opening charts and that I spent opening X or Twitter. I didn't watch YouTube content. I totally detached to give myself a hard reset. And that was actually incredibly difficult to do. I found myself picking up my phone and just by habit, immediately opening TradingView, immediately opening X, and having to like immediately close the app and say, nope, we're taking a couple of days off. And what I did find was the thing that adds the most noise to all of this is the amount of time that you're spending on X. It's not looking at the charts, it's not trying to read the charts. It's totally the noise that is coming from X. So if you want a little tip on if you're just feeling a little bit exhausted by the market, it may just be an overconsumption of content from social media. And taking a little bit of a break from that actually does wonders. So that's what I did. Typically, I'm not a huge social media person, but with all the things that are going on and trying to stay on top of the news and everything, and because you never know it, a tweet could change everything. I found myself scrolling X a whole lot more. And by scrolling X a whole lot more, I found myself consuming a whole lot of toxic, volatile, incorrect, big brain, know-it-all content of a lot of people who just don't really know what they're talking about. Because the reality is this is a difficult time in the market. And so a huge tip I could give right now is to try to reduce the amount of social media intake right now because it's a lot of noise. So otherwise, feels great to be back. We'll see how this week pans out, and hopefully it's for the positive, as we do have all those divergences happening over there on Bitcoin and structural setups there for XRP. So fingers crossed we end up getting it. Otherwise, guys, I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I'll check in with you throughout the whole week. In the meantime, you can check out the newsletter that I published last week over here called The Catalyst Event. Tariffs, was that it? Talking about how the stocks fell, fear spiked to extreme levels. We saw the fear and greed index hit a 3 on the stock market, as volatility, of course, has surged with the VIX. However, the crypto structure's dominance ratios and historical parallels give some better hints. Again, kind of washing out the noise and looking at the charts. Also give some insight into what it was like for me dealing with a lot of these tariffs and these customs duties and import fees, how that impacts businesses right now, and why I think it's highly unlikely the picture stays the way it is right now for tariffs, and that there's probably some other type of play happening. But you can check all of this out over here at blockchainbacker.substack.com, which includes a 42-minute audio recording that I personally recorded. You can check out bcbacker.com for over 40 videos and 11 hours of content teaching you how to set up your own charts and indicators within TradingView and CoinTrader Pro. There are links within the descriptions of each of my videos to the newsletter at blockchainbacker.substack.com and to bcbacker.com. Otherwise, happy new week. Kids are still home from school, so I'm getting this video out early. But tomorrow they'll be back, and then we'll be back in the saddle like usual as well. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.